In every era, there is a need, a spark, an instinct that brings us together to imagine and to innovate. This hasn't changed. What's possible has. We create technology that makes our world better. Ideas that move us, empower, and connect us. But great ideas cannot thrive alone. They need to be shared, challenged, refined. Through our insight and collective curiosity, we advance and grow. New solutions, new directions, new answers. We do that here, together. This is the age of connected intelligence. Welcome to the IQ era.
Thank you. We were CMOs busy gossiping and almost missed my cue to come up on stage. This is what happens when you get people together who I hope inspire one another. So Dawn, we'll finish that session later. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of MWC Barcelona. I hope you had an amazing first day. My mind at the end was definitely buzzing with everything I saw and learned and heard across our halls and our stages. As a marketer, I think this is one of the most exciting times to be around. As technology advances faster than ever before, I think marketers are entering what might be our most transformative era yet. It's exciting, but not always easy. Today's CMOs are being asked to do several things at once and to do them faster than ever. We're being asked to deliver growth in an uncertain environment, rebuild and protect trust with customers and, frankly, regulators. And we're being asked to do all of that and modernize data and measurement whilst integrating AI into every part of the marketing stack, all without losing what maintains brand distinction and makes us human and helps us to deliver authentic experiences. This is not a small brief. What's clear is that this moment isn't about one more tool or optimizing one more channel. It's really about rethinking the system, rethinking how data flows, how decisions are made, how creativity and technology can work together, and how accountability can be built from the very start. Today, I'm delighted that we have the opportunity to dive in and explore all of this in depth with 4 CMOs who I really admire. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Rosh Vandenberg, the Chief Marketing Officer at Globe Telecom, Neelam Sandhu, the Chief Marketing Officer at Vonage, Don McGuire, the Chief Marketing Officer at Qualcomm, and Jean-Marie Clopin, Chief Marketing Officer at Orange Europe. Please have a seat. Looking around this exhibition floor, it is hard to imagine any of this comes together without marketers. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your exhibitions and for your great thinking and for your continued support. I wonder, Neelam, maybe we could start with you.
Sure.
The marketing landscape is changing so quickly these days. I'd love to get your thoughts on what has changed the most over the past year for you.
Okay. I think maybe sort of bringing in the obvious, it's AI has come into the equation. And I think the biggest thing that marketers are focused on, and that we hear a lot from the sales teams as well, is how AI has changed the landscape from an SEO and SEM perspective. So maybe it's not as a big picture, interesting kind of statement to make, but it's our day-to-day reality that it has fundamentally changed. Search now looks at intent looks at content logic, content clarity. And so the buzzwords that we're used to using in marketing are really no longer the focus. We have to really think about authentic content and content that speaks to humans in human language. And it is changing the game. And we're, from a internal selling perspective, we're also having to think about, okay, when we're working with sales teams who are maybe our number one client internally, how do we market internally to set the scene that we're moving from volume of leads and to quality of leads and pipeline, and converting that through the funnel. So AI has fundamentally shifted how the marketing landscape in that sense. One way I'll say it hasn't shifted the landscape, at least from my perspective. I think AI, on a day-to-day basis as consumers, we're using AI for not just search, but for content, writing content as well. And I tell my team that's the one place I do not want us to use AI.
Interesting.
As we're in an environment where trust is so important. You mentioned it in your opening remarks. And with AI, I think content becomes a lot more vanilla, and it loses its personality. So that's the one place I would say we are not seeing much of a shift from a tech landscape, at least for me and my team.
Well, thank you for that. You started by saying it's maybe the obvious answer. It's a predictable answer at an event like this. I mean, AI is a massive part of every single conversation, but still so interesting to hear your thoughts. And I couldn't agree more on content. We write so much content for the show. And it would be easy maybe, or maybe some people would like us to just go to the easy tool, but it does need to remain distinctive and have some empathy or some emotion throughout the writing process.
Exactly, yeah. And you see, actually, there's some news cycles the other day about how OpenAI, they're posting jobs for content writers. So that speaks for itself, doesn't it?
That feels like a full circle moment in
does.
a very quick cycle. Jean-Marie, AI is front of mind for really all of us at the moment, but from a marketing perspective, where does AI create genuine competitive advantage versus operational parity for your...
AI. So AI for us at Orange for the marketing, it's first the real optimization of real state-of-the-art customer value management on real-time customer value management. We are going to hyper-personalization of the offer. We are going into this orchestration of the omni-channel go-to-market for our customer. On this, we have to be aware that it's a change, because it does change the way we operate for our customer. We are no more in marketing of segmentation. We are marketing of marketing of hyper-segmentation, hyper-personalization, and it's really thanks to the AI that we are doing that. So there is no magic, of course, because it's about also governance, it's about business rules, it's about operating model, and you've got to set that in place. There is no magic. It doesn't replace neither the marketeers. It's also optimization of all of this for low-value tasks that will disappear at the end of the day. But clearly, compared to what we used to do in the past for our base management, we are going a step ahead, and that's really providing a sense of comfort for our customer, a sense of recognition, and we want them to trust us about that.
Yeah, this evolution is happening so quickly, isn't it? It's a real challenge to keep up with the change and what can be implemented.
We have to run. We have to keep up with all these changes. But the thing is, we've got to respect some rules, of course, because it's not about a full automatization, because we've got to respect the brand guidelines, because brand is absolutely important for us. We've got also to respect the narrative of what we are doing. But clearly, we don't have. We've got some red line not to go too far, because if we are going too far, if we automatize too much, at the end of the day, we lose the trust of the customer. And it's important that we are doing that, this hyper-personalization, respecting some guidelines, but also ensuring that we treat the customer with business rules that are clear, that are fair, that are transparent, where there is no gender bias, for example. It's important to us where there is no bias linked to vulnerability of some customer, including for some cases where there is credit checking for the ability of the offer that we can do. So it's important to respect all these rules. In the same time, staying ahead of the pack in terms of how I use the data of the customer, respecting all the consent, having a clear consent, but nevertheless moving forward. Real time is of the essence. Simplifying on automatization is of the essence, but still having some guidelines, respecting some rule. Part of it is the consent, but not only. On it's a race, but we've got to do it in the right way.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is it's not a straightforward journey at all, is it? There are so many considerations, and I appreciate very much your comments about bias, both gender bias, and then for Orange, especially because of your various markets, you will be concerned about culture bias built into systems. So that's an interesting area of conversation. Roche, I wonder if there is a kind of single big misconception about AI that you've discovered from a marketing perspective.
Okay, there's one, yeah.
least
The
one.
single most, yeah, no, there are actually a lot. But if I'm gonna pinpoint one, it's actually the prioritization for speed over meaning, right? In marketing, as Neil already mentioned earlier, where sometimes the AI is equated to content generation or creative automation. But content production is the least of it, I would say, right? But it also adds up. So for example, in the Philippines, 1 out of 3 Filipinos are actually into using ChatGPT, right? So can you just imagine the sheer volume of that one? But what I wanted to say is what's really important to debunk actually that misconception is that AI is really important when it's being used in decision making. That's one. It's very important, especially when it cuts across the entire customer journey, how it provides value to the customers in terms of your products and services, and how we uplift their lives. Again, in the context of, because I'm the only one here from Asia, in the Philippines we have about 110 million Filipinos. And more than 50% are actually our customers at Globe. So it's very important that when we do, let's say, a precision targeting, for example, or when we use AI for that matter, is we really understand the way it actually works and bring value to their lives.
Right. We could have a whole other conversation about other marketing considerations given the size of your customer base at Globe. It would be a fascinating. We'll have to save it for a different panel, but I'd love to come back to that with you sometime and learn. Don, many CMOs are running AI pilots these days, but what does it take to move from experimentation to AI to an AI-enabled marketing organization? This feels like an extension of the conversation we started last year.
Right.
And what are some of the signals that tell you that an AI-enabled program is truly working before the numbers catch up?
Sure. Well, first of all, we leaned into AI pretty early.
Yeah.
We have a duality of, Qualcomm, right? We've been researching and commercializing AI for about 14 years as a technology, but as an enterprise CMO, I've had to integrate it into, my workflows and use it to create more of a modern marketing organization. So first thing is we start with tools have to be vetted. We have an AI council made up of legal, IT, marketing, all the stakeholders, and they have to be vetted for enterprise grade, for how they're trained, right, and for the usefulness. We go into pilot or eval. The good news is that because there's so many AI tools out there that oftentimes these companies are offering evals for free, which is fantastic. We go through eval, then we establish super users. Super users create FOMO, and that's how we scale.
Yeah.
And I'd like to go back to something earlier that you mentioned. We absolutely use AI for writing. It has been transformational.
Is that right?
Transformational. I have about 400 seats of Writer. Writer has been one of the most amazing tools. And it's not about homogeneous content. It's about establishing consistency and tone of voice. Because as we move from an SEO world to a geo world, consistency is going to become so important. How you show up in the world, because people are getting their information from an LLM, not from a Google search, right? Where you control the journey. They're scraping content from Reddit, from Twitch, from all these different sources. If you show up with different tones of voices in different places, the information that your potential customer is getting is going to be inconsistent. From a brand perspective, that's super risky and super important. So consistency is one way. Tone of voice is another way. But we have a motto at Qualcomm, which is we are human-led and AI-powered. So the people have to be involved throughout the entire workflow from the beginning all the way through the end. That's where you offer editorial content, or you editorialize your content to bring that personal touch to it, to make sure it doesn't seem homogeneous. But we are saving 2,400 hours a month just from Writer, giving productivity time back to our people to be better critical thinkers, to be more strategic, maybe have a little bit of work-life balance back in their day and in their life. So it's been a game changer for us. And it's really about how you approach this whole transformation with AI. We are going to, and by the way, resistance is futile. If you are not enabling AI as part of your workflows from a systems architecture perspective and how you market to the world going forward, you're going to be left behind. We live in a world that moves at the speed of TikTok, right? Keeping up with that is really, really, really hard for any CMO. And I can't hire another 1,000 people. Like, I'm sorry, I haven't been given a blank check, right, for my CF. I wish. But in order to scale and keep up with innovation cycles and cadence, you're going to have to integrate it. You have to do it in a thoughtful way. You have to do it in a respectful way. But it is inevitable. And there are a lot of great tools out there. But you have to approach it from a systems architecture perspective. And integrate it into your workflows. Don't hold it outside as a separate thing. And then really train your people on the right way to use it. And if you do that, you can see amazing results.
Some of this I remember you sharing last year, like the cross-functional advisory council.
Yeah.
So a year later, a year more mature into your journey, how important have those elements that you put into place to evaluate, to test, to play, really? How important has that been?
It's been really important. We've avoided, I think, a lot of potential mistakes that other brands have had with AI tools that maybe weren't vetted properly. And so I think that's one thing. Another thing is I think it's allowed us to take a more methodical approach to how we deploy. And so that's been super helpful as well. And it's created a partnership amongst all our key stakeholders. So no longer are we facing barriers to entry, but we actually have a really streamlined process where we can bring things through and really early so that they can be properly vetted. And we also have a balanced approach towards, IT may be looking at a tool for something, and they may be looking at it to deploy it across the entire enterprise. For example, like Copilot, right? We're a Microsoft shop. And so if you just leave it up to one group to make decisions on which tools you should use, they're going to look at it from a sort of a macro perspective, but they're not going to look at it from a customization perspective. So initially, we had this debate about Copilot versus Writer, for example. But Copilot can't do what Writer does. And from a marketing perspective, we really needed that customization for our business or for our discipline. And so having this council enable us to have those conversations early and then get the right tools deployed for our needs, not just take whatever IT is giving us.
Right.
So that's been super helpful. Not to bash IT. I love IT. But
some of my own marketing leadership team is in the audience right now, and I can see us taking notes. Like, this is actually a very good idea. I think
and they've been a great partner, by the way. CMO-CIO relationship right now has never been more important. You need to be best friends with your CIO.
100%. 100%. I also wonder, I'm going off script a little bit if that's okay, but the 2,400 hours that you got back, I would think that there's a cultural shift that you need to be really sincere about as you start employing these tools as well. So obviously Qualcomm has done something clever in that shift to encourage employees to use it, to truly give them back the time. Is there a secret behind how you've done that you could share?
Well, I think the biggest thing, human nature is human nature, right? And when you have people going around and bragging about how much time they're saving, and this amazing tool, people start to listen, and they start to go, oh, well, I would love to use that, you know? So this whole super user
Has been
sort of phenomenon has been very, very, very interesting and super helpful into driving deployment and actually adoptability. Because, you know, people are scared,
Yeah.
right? Especially the middle layer. All of my new young employees, Gen Zers that are coming in, they're coming in AI native, right? They're making videos on Sora,
Yeah.
right? They're using AI. They're, to your point about ChatGPT, like they're using AI in their daily lives. They already were, so they're not the issue. It's really the middle layer who's been used to doing things a really long time the same way. There's a fear factor there. So we've got to make sure that those folks can feel comfortable
Yeah.
in trying and using these tools. Ryder also, you know, the tool matters. The company that you buy the tool from matters. Ryder provides a tremendous support system. Weekly trainings, weekly sort of brown bags, lots of people to help you, and works with the team on creating agents and customizing them. And so that support mechanism that a lot of AI companies probably don't have if they're startups and things like that, that really matters. Ryder's done that phenomenally, and even I would argue even better than Microsoft. So that's really important in order to get people comfortable with using the tools.
Okay, nice. That's a top tip, actually, given by Don today. Thank you. Back to Roche and Jean-Marie. Speaking of numbers, as marketers, metrics are a critical part of your work, especially as operators. I'm interested to know what sort of metrics do you trust most for the investment decisions that you're making and why?
For obvious reason, of course, you have all those media and creatives, but what's really important is what is the return to business, right? What are the metrics that's important for the growth of the company? On top of that, as marketers as well, it's very important that we measure the trust index, right? Because especially for AI and in Asia, and I think it's all over the world, right? There are a lot of deep fakes, there are a lot of SMS scams, and trust once broken, and you know we're in that our business actually trust, right? Our customers trust us for providing them, enabling them to do their livelihood. So the trust index is one that we really really like to put in our measurement.
Oh, I like that you mentioned that. Not just deep fakes, but also the amount of information, especially this year around fraud and scams, incredibly important for you to be measuring trust. How do you do that?
Yeah, so we do have our equity, right, checks, right? So it's still in the early stage, but it's something that we've been looking at already for, I think, for almost a year or so on that one. Definitely, because again, so we have some vectors, I would say. So we have some attributes that really connect it to the how we do the business and how customers actually choose Globe, for example, because of the, let's say, online safety. In fact, just to add, we actually have a program. We call it the Digital Thumbprint Program, right? Because again, in Asia, education is very important, right? Not everything that we see online should be trusted, should be real. So we try to embed that in our education space for AI, and that's something that we also measure in connection to the trust index.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Jean-Marie, metrics for you.
If it's not measured, it doesn't exist. Just
Yeah.
as simple as that. You can dream, you can hope, you can, but you've got to measure. If you don't measure, so everything you do, especially with AI, you have to measure. Any investment, anything, it has to be measured. So if you don't have the appropriate value measurement dashboard for everything you do with AI, you're just lost. You can guess on you've got if you are working in a large telco customer base as we have, you've got to do it the right way with the right UCG control group. If you don't do that with clear measurement, clear KPI, then you are just lost. You have no North Star. Now, of course, there are some simple elements. There is the RPU, the evolution of the churn. You've got the uptake of proposal that you're doing to the customer. Of course, there is all of that, and that's part of what we are doing. But you've got to measure it with the customer experience tracking. You've got to measure it with the NPS, Net Promoter Score. it has to be our North Star, because the customer, they tell you something. If they, as you mentioned, if they don't trust you anymore, it's over. So the question is to measure both what you're doing in terms of business revenue, value creation, but also measuring the trust of your customer. And of course, if you're doing that kind of things, you will be, of course, generating call avoidance. So you'll have less complaint, and then you, of course, also eliminate topics. So it has to be measured also, but first, value creation, everything you do with AI, you've got to measure it, all things being equal, otherwise with the right metrics, with the right methodology. Sometimes it's cumbersome, but you've got to do it because otherwise you do it in the fog. And always measure the trust, the customer experience, the NPS of your customer. The figures, at the end of the day, they don't lie. You may hate the figures, but you've got to cope with that. You've got to progress with that, especially in a world where we all have to progress. What I think Don mentioned about relationship between CIO, CMO, but it's all the translation skill between the marketers that were not born to code, some of them. And then you've got to get a new organization, methodology, on all of that. We've got to do it. We've got to upskill, but it's not only pure tick the box operation. And it has to be measured.
All of it, all of the increased competition, the increased tools, the access to AI, all of it means even more discipline around measurements within the business to determine how things are going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that, then you're going to a path where you've got beliefs, and it's always good to have beliefs. It's good to have brand guideline, brand tone of voice. You've got to get all of that. That's why many things that you do with AI, including for organizing the conversation with the customer, it has to be, in many cases, it has to be human reviewed. Because if it's not, you dilute your brand. And it's absolutely important for us not to be diluted in terms of how we communicate with the customer. So brand strategy is important, but everything we do to automatize also with AI, we do it in a way that these are both low tasks that are purely automatized, that we inject some intelligence to do more data-based communication and operation for our customer, and we focus on brand strategy, on the evolution of the experiment, on what we are doing to increase the strength of the relationship with our customer and the trust, as you mentioned.
Thank you so much. Neelam, you mentioned earlier some things that you are not using AI for. Mm-hmm. What are some ways that you are using AI in your marketing advantage?
Yeah. A slightly complex answer, because I think we still have so much to figure out with AI. It's certainly more than just a buzzword. I mean, we all have experienced so many buzzwords over the last few years, but it's certainly the hype is translating into implementation. But there is, I think, still a piece of it that we have to figure out, particularly around data integrity and being able to trust the data that we're looking at. But I describe myself as someone who's left and right-brained. I love the creative side of things, but I also geek out on data. And so those are the two ways that I am encouraging the team to use AI. One is around, on the creative side, to personalize content at scale and create like micro variations of campaigns. So we're still owning the human touch is still there in terms of us developing the overarching content and campaign, but then personalizing it for almost the added human touch is where we bring in AI to do that at scale. So it's no longer about segmenting by persona or by industry. It's about segmenting by the individual. And that then leads me into the next piece of how we're using AI, which is around understanding the individual better. And so the data side of things. So we're looking at, again, understanding the individual better and across the customer journey. and being able to predict their movements as well as influence them. And then that translates into better optimizing our spend, and again, like sort of predicting outcomes with things as well. But a lot still to figure out. I'm very conscious of the fact that AI is such an unknown right now. I mean, and then also what's feeding AI is data that, I mean, we don't really know necessarily a single source of truth of data online anymore, and there's so much data that is not actually online. It still lives in books and other places. So how do we kind of take those things into consideration? And you mentioned like keeping the human in mind throughout the workflows, no matter what we're automating. I think that remains really important.
Yeah, Don said that earlier, and Con Terziolu from Vion said it yesterday this way. We should stop actually referring to it as artificial intelligence and start talking about augmented intelligence, which is a combination of human and technology, which would be a much maybe more approachable way of describing it. So I appreciate your insights and your candor. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Don, what is the CMO's role in preventing brand dilution when speed and automation really have become the default? I mean, you talked about it earlier.
Yeah. Well, you have to obviously remain true to yourself, know who you are. I think the recipe for, successful marketing hasn't changed over the years. It's the how we achieve that has evolved. But you have to know who you are as a brand, and you have to stay true to that. And we've seen examples probably over the last couple of years when you divert away from who you are and that authenticity that comes with who you are, you tend to run into trouble. You've got to continue to know your audience, who you're speaking to. You've got to provide context, make things relevant, meet them where they are. And that, if you do all those things, no matter if you do that using 5 tools or 1 tool or different tools, then you're going to drive the resonance and the action that you want to drive to be successful. So it's important to the recipe stays pretty much the same, but the how you achieve it, I think, changes. And there's different levels of ways to engage your audience. And I'll give you an example. You don't have to spend millions of dollars producing cinematic quality content for social media. Like, you just don't, right? Because people understand context when they're viewing or they're engaging with content in certain platforms and certain levels. Yeah. In fact, a lot of people are now deploying strategies where they're starting in social, getting the feedback loop going, and then deciding whether to spend that money to produce something more cinematic that's going to go maybe to linear or into another channel or platform, which is the opposite of how marketers used to think about that, right? Let's go shoot the TV spot. Oh, then let's cut it down. Let's make 30s and 15s and 6s and 2s and then shove it everywhere. Like, that's old thinking. Like, you have to reverse that pattern now, and you have to think about it like, you know what? Maybe I can shoot on a smartphone, get a little gritty, make it more UGC, and that's okay. That's okay for TikTok. That's okay for people. They see that every day, every hour of every day, maybe every minute of every hour of every day. So you have to start putting that into your zeitgeist and as you kind of develop your storytelling. So I think there's a lot of things going on, and they shouldn't, speed and quality and speed and staying true to your brand shouldn't necessarily conflict with each other. I don't think they have to, right? I think if you're doing things the right way and you're understanding engagement patterns and consumption patterns and how people want to engage with content, you can kind of figure out the right place, the right time, the right style, the right quality level that you need for the way that people are engaging with your brand. And again, the biggest examples that I've seen, and I've talked about on panels and with other CMOs of where that really goes wrong is, number one, if you miss your audience, or you try to do something that's not true to who you are. We've had a lot of examples in the last 2 years of that, especially in the US and other places. And then if you worry about being authentic, you've made a bad decision at the very beginning, right? If you're worried about something being not authentic, then you've done something wrong, right? You shouldn't have to worry about it because you can't try too hard to be authentic. Authenticity is something that just comes naturally.
It should just come down. That's the whole definition.
That's the whole definition of authentic, right? So, so that's another maybe question you can ask yourself.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So I don't necessarily think speed and brand, sort of governance, safety, or how you want to protect and avoid dilution have to conflict with each other.
Yeah, they're not conflicting priorities, in other
No.
words. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are lots of examples of inauthentic brands in the market. And it's amazing how quickly audiences can sniff that out.
They'll call you out.
And you do get called out in a very painful way these days when you make a mistake as a marketer, don't you?
Everybody has a platform.
Everybody is a broadcaster.
Everyone's a
right?
broadcaster.
Absolutely. Maybe to finish up then, well, I might have two final questions, but I'd like to pose this one to everyone. So maybe we want to move to a more philosophical state of mind, and we'll start at the end, Jean-Marie, and work our way back to you, Roche. To close our discussion, let me ask this question. What's one bold bet that you're making as a CMO and one principle that you won't compromise on?
The bet is we go agentic this year. Till now, it was not organized that way, but in a telco, you've got such amount of process overlay since a decade, so it's such a nightmare. We've got to go agentic. So it will help both the customer experience, the way our agent, the way they work, our customer service rep, whoever. So we'll be doing this agentic journey. Now it has to be well controlled, well managed, with all the elements that make it a safe way. So, of course, going agentic, it should improve the Net Promoter Score for our customer. It should improve the quality of what we'll be doing, of the offers that we're now. At the same time, of course, it will diminish the workforce to make it happen, and we are totally aware of that. So it has to be done in a safe way. It has to be done in an industrial way. So next step for this real-time, also customer value management, it's going agentic. So that's what we'll be doing in the 12 months to come. We've got red lines, of course. On part of the red lines, they're regulatory. We're in France, not in the US, so not the same regulation, not the same. So there is a law in France, in Europe. So of course, so these are red lines, and there is no reason why we should cross these red lines in trying to move forward in a hectic manner, which is so not mixing. So speed is of the essence, but doing it the right way. I mentioned some kind of bias that we want to be sure that we're on the safe side on this bias, on this regulation, because at the end of the day, we want to build trust with our customer. On part of it, there is the consent management. On this consent management, it has to be done properly so that it generates, at the end of the day, not fear, it generates trust.
Yeah. In fact, one of the advantages, I suppose, of having such a diverse panel is you have different regulatory environments represented, and some of you have consumers and some of you have enterprise-level customers. So very, very different. We'll have to have another session on regulatory therapy, maybe, for some of us who operate in Europe. Don, for you, philosophically, the big bet that you're making this year and the principle that you will not bet on.
I think one of the big bets is the transition to geo. Search patterns have shifted. I've told this story before, but when my 89-year-old mother calls ChatGPT her boyfriend, the shift has happened, and so we've got to move. And so we're making decisions or looking at decisions like, do I move my search budget? Right? Do I take a percentage of my search budget and move it to comms? Right? When we publish content, do we have to have a multifaceted strategy now to, instead of self-publishing, do we self-publish plus, right, hand the task off to third-party creators and publishers so that we can make sure we're triangulating our messages to get, to surface the brand, in Perplexity or in ChatGPT or on Claude or whatever in the right way, in a consistent, way. So that's one big bet we're making because the patterns have shifted. They've just shifted. And when you get into the LLM, you're not leaving, right? So it's not like traditional search. So they're just going deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
Oh, let me ask it another question, another question. So you've got to be able to adapt to that world. So that's one big bet we're making. We've done a lot of testing, and before we started paying attention to this, it wasn't pretty.
Yeah.
We were showing up in so many different ways on so many different LLMs, so we have to address that. I think every brand does. One principle, although I think we're not willing to compromise, is when it comes to brand ethos, especially for Snapdragon, but also for our other brands. Our brand ethos is so important to meeting our North Star, which is creating a cultural icon. And so we won't compromise on that. And that's one principle that my team and the company, and gladly our CEO, is 100% supportive of. Everybody wants to take it and stretch it and to pull it into different areas because they love it. That's great. It's very flattering, but it can't go everywhere. It has to stay where it belongs. And so we will not compromise on that.
Nice. Thank you so much. Neelam, a big bet that you're making this year.
A bit of a red thread with the previous answers. So my red thread is that a shift from quantity and quality to more about speed and quality. So the quantity of what we're doing will probably decrease, but the speed and quality of our execution increases, and that shifts for different functions across the business. It shifts how they think and operate too. So if you think about sales as an example, we're shifting from quantity of leads to quality of leads, and then a faster speed of conversion of those. That's our intent. But again, it's a mindset shift for teams internally where that seems like kind of a red flag to them, and it creates some level of fear until they experience it and see that it's actually driving results. So it's that period of change can be quite disruptive and create some noise. So, and then similarly in terms of content, quantity of content is not the answer. There is so much content out there, and nobody can ingest it anymore. And I tell my team as well, like the number of communications that we put out, external, internal, the number of white papers, that I don't even have time to read them. And I'm the CMO, so I don't know who is going to take these things in. It's about consistency. It's a trustworthy message, a consistent message, and just kind of repeating that, because that is actually how the human brain works. You have to hear something a number of times to really take that in. So that's one piece. And then a principle I won't shift on is that I see marketers as general managers. We don't just do marketing. We, to some degree, do everything. We, from an internal marketing perspective, we're responsible for enabling the culture within the company, for driving everybody towards a shared vision internally. Externally, it's about customer experience. It's about driving growth. Brand marketing is about enabling trust, and trust is the currency that is really important in today's world. So there's so many different levers that marketing is responsible for, and we have to see ourselves as general managers. And I think business owners across the business have to see marketers that way more and more as well, as a business growth driver and as general managers of the business.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're absolutely right. Trust is the currency in this kind of IQ era.
Yeah.
And I think that what you've said about your brand is not dissimilar to what Dawn has said. Maybe you've said it different ways, but the fact that your brand externally has an expression and a persona and attributes, it needs to be reflected internally and vice versa, right? Otherwise, you do end up in inauthentic spaces, I think, very much.
Exactly, yeah. We're actually working on a brand refresh at the moment, sort of sneak peek of that announcement. But one of the things I've told my team and our agency as well, that we have to, this is not about refreshing us to look like a more modern brand. It's about reflecting the personality of our brand. And that's what actually drives longevity, but trust and a connection with the individuals, whether they're employees or customers or somebody else. So yeah.
Please share the brand refresh with
I
us
will.
the minute you have it and the minute we're allowed to share it ourselves. Rosh, how about for yourself?
Okay, so contrary to popular belief, we're not, my big bold bet is not about productivity and growth, but uh, it's really about doing more critical thinking, I would say, and human ingenuity, especially with everything happening around us. And it's important, especially in our market in Asia, because, for example, in the Philippines, we wanted to be able to use AI, for example, for nation building, right? For education, for digital inclusion, right? So it's very important that the authenticity and that critical thinking is actually imputed in the way that we do things. Now, regarding the red line that we don't want to cross, so it's really just the opposite. Anything that has to do with not being responsible, not being ethical, not being authentic, and the likes. So that's something that we wanted to avoid, definitely. Because for me, I wanted to be able to look into the eyes of our customers, right? We have 64 million. I wanted to be able to look into the eyes of a mom that what we're doing, the technology that we're bringing, is something that's real, that's authentic, and that's really valuable to the way that she lived her life and that of her family.
There's some really interesting work in the telco space going on around that moral imperative of some of the things that we do. So it sounds like you're deeply entrenched in those conversations. I'll look forward to hearing more about those at another time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. We really appreciate you being a part of this CMO panel. Thank you very much. I hope, and thank you for joining us today. I hope and wish you an outrageously successful MWC. Thank you. Thank you.